My name is Bill Bosch. I forgot how many years I've been teaching, but it's been over 50 now. So I'm still teaching a course in the computer science department. Each year, Doug Lee pops his head in the door about the third week of the semester and says, "Bill, I put you down for next semester," and closes the door. So I keep coming back on here. My background's mathematics and computer science, and before John took over and straightened the place up, I was self-director for about 15 years also on my side. And basically what I came up with is, these one of my key word here I'm trying to think of is the student evaluations can be a pain in the neck. Okay, I feel they show a trend, but they're not extremely accurate. Working in CELT, I've had some departments that figuring out the nearest tenth of a percent, which is completely ridiculous, type of thing. But I found these are little things that not only raise the student evaluations, but actually improve learning in the classroom. Now, we'll see how well this works after. I'm going to blame John if it doesn't work. So let's see.
Okay.
Okay.
Course is the title of Courtesy. I will extend back to you, Mr. or Miss, as the circumstances allow. Welcome to Music Appreciation. This is a class in which we will be studying the history of
working a minute ago.
who would like to give me a definition of what music is?
John, you have a laptop I can just sit up here?
Any music. What do you think?
It has
Music. What do they think that music is?
No, I can just set it up on the table here. I can do this thing right here.
Nobody?
It's in a room.
Okay.
There's like 40 people right now.
Let's go to the text and we turn to page 4 and we read that music.
Tell you what.
It's all on a USB. I can just plug in the
Yeah,
laptop.
we can just go to the desktop. That might be easier. Do you know which one it was?
Down low then.
This one?
It's hard to see from here.
Yeah, try that one.
No. Not that one. Wrong one.
Griffin,
Someone look at you.
That's the wrong
I'm not.
one.
It's, in fact, I'm about to challenge the entire curriculum. I just have to say.
What you can know what's going on in those.
Narrowing it down.
All right.
That's it, I think, actually.
No, this area is.
Course is the title of Courtesy.
Okay.
I will extend back to you, Mr. or Miss, as
I did get all this.
Sorry about that.
welcome to Music Appreciation. This is a class in which we will be studying the history of music. Who would like to give me a definition of what music is? Any music. What do you think? Music. What do they think that music is in general? Anybody? Nobody? Okay, let's go to the text and we turn to page 4 and we read that music is sound in melodic or harmonic combinations, whether produced by voice or instrument. Now, questions? Anybody at all? No?
Okay, sort of a typical beginning class. I love the student. Let's go to the third slide now. Okay, depending on the size of your class, there's a lot of little things you can do. Either you teach large classes
Yeah.
Okay. And John chipped in too, because you have a full assortment of several hundred in your classes. When I was teaching a large class, I signed up for some near the end of my career because it would build up my retirement, to be honest. It wasn't my favorite venue. But students would walk in late or leave early, and it was harder than heck to keep track of who was who. So I stole this idea. I would sometimes hand out a 1/2-page sheet of paper, which I called the quiz at the beginning of class. But I would hand them out so somebody can take 2 or 3. And then I would lay some like pink ones on there. If somebody can late, they can pick one up. And this would be some simple quiz that I could grade 5 minutes or something. I wouldn't have to spend anything. It would be like a bonus point, so you wouldn't have to worry about makeups. Well, very quickly I could tell who was there on time, and and who actually signed in. Well, you get the other end of the class where people sort of wander out. Well, I would have an attendance quiz at the end. I would do these especially once or twice at the beginning of the semester. I would hand out this half sheet of paper at the end, and then I would match it up with the attendance sheet to see who was there, who wasn't there. Since everybody only got one quiz, there's no way that they could write one in for their buddy who they signed the name in for or whatever. So this allowed me and the students, I'm putting the quiz into the evaluation system, which is always important what you're going to have them do, for a point out of 500, 600, 700 points immediately. But the students, that sometimes means a lot to them.
Right, yeah.
Well, this allowed me to do it. I didn't care if they did it or not. If I saw a bunch of students I always had these quizzes handy. I could track down immediately who's leaving and so forth. And once they know you're going to do this, they think twice about wandering in and out. It makes the class less distracting. There's nothing more than distracting. Be sitting there, some guy next to you packing up, throwing on their jacket, walking out, or to you as an instructor trying to, do that. So let's see if we can get to the second half of it. Here we go. Another thing I do, and John uses clickers for this, but I also would hand out like colored index cards, 3 different colors. How many people think the yellow answer is right? You could do it immediately, scan, and see how many people held up the yellow one when the correct one was a green card or whatever, and then you could stop. This is from a computer scientist, non-technical type of thing, but it's very easy to do without worrying about clickers and everything else. So if they chose the wrong answer, you could stop what you were doing right there and say, maybe I'll approach this in a different way, or get in small groups and decide what the right answer was and so forth. So it's a good way to interact with the class very quickly. And you're not just plowing along trying to go on to something else when they really didn't understand the concept you're on. So it's a real simple way of doing it. In the bigger classes, I would always take some, of course, the secretary loved this. I take a couple rows of masking tape from the supply thing, and I would block off the last few rows.
Police tape could do it too.
Pardon?
You could use police tape too. Crime scene tape.
Yeah,
I did
but
this last
the thing
semester,
is, you
yeah.
could bring the classes down a little closer to you rather than have the guy in the very back, sort of zoned out. So that's the way to sort of bring those down. And of course, I sometimes would use social media for office hours. I started it back when there was IMs, and that allowed students to come, or if it's a bad snowstorm, they're down the other end of campus, you can interact them that way. So you can even have a Facebook page, Professor so-and-so, separate from your own page. But I mean, it would be a way for the students to interact and so forth. You can have one for each class or one in general. So students like the social media, so it's a good way sometimes to get them where they may not in a large class want to ask something type of thing. So you have that type of thing.
Or you could use a Google Hangout. You could just go into your calendar and click add video call and just schedule it every week during your office hours if you like.
So these are ways to sort of expand it without having to sit there an extra 2 hours and only have one student show up type of thing or whatever.
Right.
I always announce quizzes if, you know, and John's seen me say this before, but I still remember students, if you assign reading and you can have a discussion or go over something, students will have the book open down here, sort of looking at the book, haven't really read it. You know, I did this once in a while myself when I was a student. What I found that really worked to say, next class, we're going to have a quiz at the beginning of class on the first 20 pages in chapter 3, or in the minerals or whatever. Tell them specifically what it's going to be on. This will do away sometime of you going over individual items like a checklist on the board. If you assume they already have read it, you can go to another level. And the best way to assume they already have read it is they know they're going to have a quiz. Guess what they do?
Yeah.
They read it.
Yeah.
And you could do a
again-
little bit of flipping too and put it in a Blackboard quiz and just have it do it at the start of class. So.
Sure. I mean, these are all ways so that you can set up your class without going over stuff that they should have read, but probably didn't. So this is a real good way. And, yeah. I also give them, for quizzes, I give them a small index card, larger one for exams. I say you can write anything on the card you want and bring it into the quiz or exam. Reasoning behind it, I can have my quiz exam a little higher level of Bloom's, a little higher level than just recall. And I found this after doing it for a while, students have said, she said, I didn't even have to use the card because I just studied stuff I didn't know and wrote it on the card. So you're not having memorized stuff they already know. What are you going to put on the card?
Right.
Stuff you
Don't know.
didn't know.
Yeah.
So your study time is then concentrated on stuff
And
you
it
don't
makes
know.
them think about what they know and what they don't know.
Did you make the
That's
further
useful.
part of it at the end?
I do maybe once or twice a semester, just because I'm curious. But, you know, in the class, you might have 5 or 10% won't do a card. You know, they're had a bad hangover from the night before or whatever. They're just not going to do it. Some of them, I don't know how they write that small. I mean, but you know, they're spending time on the subject that you want them to, and you can target their studying by telling them what's on the quizzes, because there are certain areas that, you know, as you go along, they're sort of not real important, but there's certain areas they really should concentrate on. And this is a way to concentrate the study, you know, target the study in areas that you really want them to. Again, for exams, I use the bigger cards and I tell them they can't bring in books, they can't use printed material, they can't use copied stuff, it has to be handwritten, or they can't use the card. They can't substitute a poster board for the card, or, you know, anything along that way. But again, majority of them come in and, you know, and like I say, I had some of them say, I don't use the card because I know the stuff now. So it's a great way to do that.
Now, you may have seen that picture going around on Facebook last December where the professor just said you can bring in a 3x5 card, and someone brought in the 3x5 foot one, but he hadn't specified units, so he actually allowed it.
I actually hand them out in class before, but that's right. You want, of course, it doesn't apply today when the computer wasn't working right, but it's important if you expect them to be there on time that you start on time, and expect them to stay there to the end. It's important that you make sure you end it on time.
It explains a large part of the variation in course evaluations that they do see whether you're prepared at the start of class as being an important indicator of your quality as an instructor.
That's interesting.
I mean, it seems trivial, but this is feels
So get there a
important.
couple minutes early, get set up and ready to start.
Again, the in-class time is so valuable that you don't want to waste it on stuff that is not difficult or important. And again, there's where your readings, announce quizzes. If you're doing group work, you want to you want to stress the time. If I'm having a group work on something and I want to really give them 5 minutes, I'll say, you got 3 minutes to do this. And I have the group hand in something at the end that's graded. So they actually have to write something down. At the end of 3 minutes, I'll say how many people need more time. Well, they're all hustling, and I intended to give more time anyway. But the concentration is there. They say, "Oh, go ahead and work on this." Yeah, oh yeah. Where were you last night? Oh, at the house party. You know, I mean that happens. But if they have to have something written down and handed in, and they're under tight time, they're going to stay on task. You know, I mean, maybe not every single one, but majority of them will concentrate on task. Again, I mark the stuff they hand in, check plus, outstanding, check average, check minus poor, and if it's crap, I give them an X, and I give them out of 10 points. 10 points for outstanding, 8. You know, but it makes it so I can correct it quickly. I don't want to spend hour upon hour doing this. I want something I can go through in 10 minutes, and even with a large class, 15 minutes maybe, and get that back to them. Again, if it's not an evaluation system, they're not going to take it seriously. The key word is, does it count? Ever heard that? If yes, it counts, you're going to get their attention on this. So it's nice to have a whole bunch of small ones. Ken?
Well, we'd like students to be motivated by implicit motivation. It tends not to always work that way. And they also see your grading system as an indicator of what's important to you in the course. So if you don't assign points to something, no matter how trivial, they see it as not being that important, no matter how important it actually is in terms of their learning.
Okay, again, I was going to ask John and so forth. You guys have ideas or something that you would like to share that you do? Because I'm constantly changing over the years. If I find if the people who teach the best feel that they don't and always are improving, you know, every once in a while I run somebody, I'm great. And you listen to the students, and not the same.
I don't have anything that I do specifically. I've been trying to do small assignments. So in my large classrooms, I try to do, you know, small assignments that are graded that gives them sort of that value. That I probably spend a lot more time grading them than what I should do, but they're broken into smaller groups. And generally, my classes are like 60.
Oh,
so
wow,
far.
that's decent size.
And so it's you know, it's kind of right in the middle, right? It's not real big. It's certainly not a couple hundred students like you've had.
Yeah.
But it's
still a lot of work.
It's still a lot of work
Yeah.
to do, and I still have them work together, but hand in individually, which makes
Okay.
more grading, right? So I'm not
Sure.
sort of grading for a group, but that way everybody in the group, hopefully everybody in the group is writing something down rather than one person doing it, writing it all down, handing
Sure.
it in, and 4 other people getting a grade, right? So but I don't have, again, that's the reason that I came here today, is to hear more
Sure.
about these
Yeah, I've
things.
been trying to figure out the efficiency issue. So I have 120 in my class. And so my homework model, I would like to figure out a way to maybe provide a little bit more better credit, but they get no credit for their homework. However, if they don't do the homework, they will fail the exams because the questions in the homework are basically the free response version of the multiple choice exam.
Mhm.
And so they're set up so that they just follow through the lecture and they can answer questions and stuff. But the notion of trying to grade that volume of material is impossible.
But you can automate it. You can do some of it in Blackboard, and you could do some of it with clickers, at least if you have multiple choice versions of it.
I want the homeworks to be free response, right?
But in that case, you can still do it in Blackboard where you can have free response. Well, it depends on what.
Mhm.
If they're numeric questions, it's easy.
Yeah.
But if it's not, you have to think about all possible answers they might have, and
Tried
that's
that
tough.
with bad results.
Yeah,
And
it doesn't
and
work
I've done
well.
it
It's
too.
not
But if you
always
do
safe.
the same types of things for multiple years, you go in and you correct it, and you find other things they're saying, and then you search for that substring you know, for that set of words or whatever, and then you give credit for that. And when you find other cases, you add that to the list of the correct answers.
Right.
But it's not easy,
And so
unless it's numeric.
The design of having the paper version is that basically if they complete the homework, it provides them a perfect study guide,
Sure.
right? And so I've been trying to toy with the idea of if you grade it for just completeness, that opens up a world of difficulties. But in the end, it doesn't actually influence their grade at all, right? If I were to grade the homework exactly, because
It's
of the
going to be so
nature,
correlated to the exam.
exactly. And so I don't know, I've been just trying to figure out a way to boost a little bit more of the involvement, because that's what the students say they want. But I don't know if it's,
Well, one thing, and I have to admit, I do this, is the first thing I sign and hand in, I'll take a lot of time and go through it, even circling, spelling, everything. So now the student's under the impression, hey, he's going to look at this thing. Then after this,
You
I'll
don't have
just
to grade it
spot.
carefully.
I'll just flip through and spot. And then sometimes, you know, I will have individual, other times I'll have group. I'll sort of mix up. But sometimes discussing answers together helps, other times it doesn't. But I find a mixture of things. And I would let them know if you're going to grade it, but if you're going, how many in your class? 100?
120-ish.
Yeah.
So
So,
one strategy that some people have used is just randomized grading, where everyone turns it in, but you grade maybe 20% of them. And if you do that often enough, there was a study done in an economics class where they had a control group where everyone was graded, another class that was identical, taught by the same instructor with the same PowerPoint slides, whatever. And they graded 20% of them, but they did this weekly. There was no significant difference in student performance in terms of the likelihood of submitting it or in terms of their course grades.
I'm sure that would be
As long as there's enough
unpopular
risk
also.
that theirs might be graded, it might work, you know? And as long as they get
but it's
graded
nice,
often
this
enough.
makes a nice study guide. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the structure.
But, you know, if you could convert some of it to clickers, then there's no work in grading. You lose a free response, but.
Right.
Here comes, John, we're going to do the Schwarzenegger movie.
Okay.
Oh, this is from.
This is how am I doing? This is evaluations.
I think maybe it's because they don't have this built-in program.
Kindergarten cop or something, right? Yeah.
What's that supposed to mean?
This is half-face a lot better than you.
Is she really?
My mom's a teacher in this school. She's a lot better than you too.
Great.
On Monday nights, my mom tutors. Mrs. Quinn takes care of me, and she's bigger than you too.
Great.
And freaking my swimming teacher and Gus, my t-ball coach, are better than you too.
I really appreciate your honesty. You happen to know someone that is not better than me?
I don't know that many people.
Okay. So sort of a student's evaluation here. Just as we get back to the. Okay. There's a difference between assessment and evaluation, and let me just give you a real brief example. Suppose you hand in a paper a week early, and the professor here, she goes through, gives suggestions and circles errors and so forth. You're going to read that paper over fairly carefully because you're going to hand it in for evaluation, which is a grade. So there's a difference. Same thing in when you're looking at student evaluations happen at the end of the semester, and they're sort of what goes to the department and so forth. I recommend, and I do this myself. Oh, there we go. And halfway through the class, I ask the students to do an assessment of it. So it's not an evaluation because it's not going to affect me, it's not going to the thing. I convince the students that I give them generous a bonus point if they do an assessment of the class. And I set the assessments up as follows. Okay. Let me- Okay, on one side of the paper, I say for the class, I want to know what's the strength of the class. What am I doing well that you want me to keep on doing? Do you like my class is a hybrid? Should I keep doing the hybrid class? But they don't get credit unless they tell me why it's a strength. Doesn't do me any good to say, I like this, but I want to know why I like it. And then improvement doesn't mean the class is terrible. I give the example of baseball hitter batting 300. Can you get better? Yeah. Does it mean you're a terrible hitter? But telling me this class blanks without any how to improve it is worthless. So I want them to tell me how I can make the class better. Remember, this is midway in the semester. This is not for the faculty. So, and I want an insight into it. I'm really learning about interest in geology I didn't have before or whatever, but it's some feeling they have for the class. That's worth one bonus point to be added onto their next exam. Now they flip it over. On the back, they do assessment of their performance in the class. What things can they do to improve their performance? What are some of their strengths? So I do all the homework on time. It helps me keep up, how can I improve my performance in the class? And then an insight, if I started the assignments earlier than the night before, I probably, an insight into it. So then the important thing is when I go through these, I give them a point for each, so they get the 2 points on their next exam, which you all know is can change your grade a whole lot, but they're real interested, and they put their name on it because this isn't telling me I'm bad, it's telling me how to make the class better. I stress that. When I'm done, I will write down on a piece of paper what they feel are strengths for the class and how to improve the class. Then after the class, after they hand these in, I'll go in and say, well, here's some of the things that you said you like. I'll keep doing these. And then I'll pick several things that I'm going to change in the class specifically. And I'll remind them from now to the end of the semester what things I have improved, like, my grades online, or whatever they feel. But you have to remind them that you went ahead and
You made some changes, or
made the changes
you
that
listened
they
to them.
suggested.
Yeah.
This gives them a chance to vent midway in the semester rather than venting on the evaluations at the end if they feel something's bad. Not only that, but sometimes there's stuff I can actually improve the learning in the class, that I hadn't realized. It looks different when you're on the other end of the desk type of thing. So I do have a master here.
Sure.
If you're interested.
And another way of doing the same thing is you could create a little Google form, and you could create a QR code, post it up on the screen. If you ask them if they have a QR reader, they'll generally say, "What's that?" But then tell them to open up Snapchat and take a picture of it, and then, then it worked. But then and this could also work with some quantitative questions too, or with qualitative responses. Just have them type in, put a question up, send them to a Google form, and then it all comes into a spreadsheet. And if most of them get it, you could just copy down however many points it is, and then just change it for the ones where they don't get full credit, or vice versa.
When you do like YouTube Live, you can write and the creators can see it and answer. I'm trying to figure out if there's an anonymous way to do that during class, because one of the comments I got from some students is they would have liked to ask a question, but they just don't want to do it in a group.
In a really easy way, do you use Google Slides?
I do not.
Okay. If you do, and you can import PowerPoint or other things, or PDFs into it, you can choose presenter mode, and then it has a Q&A option. And if you enable that, right at the top of each slide, it gives you a URL, a short URL. They can go to that, and then you can type in, they can just put in responses or questions or feedback throughout it. But one issue with it actually in a larger class is you can require them to input their names, but if you require them to log in, they still have the option of checking a box to make it anonymous. And some, you may say that. And I try, well, we did this actually with an orientation for that the student success specialist gave on math and math learning techniques and so forth. And some people were posting some racist comments on there.
But is it posted to everyone or just the instructor?
Well, the issue is anyone who types in will be able to see what other people have typed in. It's anonymous, but the anonymity in a large group does not always encourage the best behavior. In my class, when I tried doing this, because I hadn't done it before in my class of 360 this fall, they started posting their Snapchat, IDs, and they started talking about, the characteristics of some people from the opposite sex in the class and how it looked, So it became more of a dating type thing than anything productive. So I shut it down pretty quickly. But yeah, you can do a number of things.
But is there something, I mean, what he was suggesting, is there a way to be able to, something very similar to that, but just have it show up
To me only.
on the instructor's screen only?
One way of doing that is with Socrative, but it requires a paid account. Socrative is a polling app where you can have free response questions, and by default, only the instructor can see it. You'd have to open up another window or another desktop or whatever, or on a mobile device. I think it's only like $70 for a year, though, maybe $50, maybe $50. It's not that expensive. You can use it for free for up to 50 students, but to have more than that, you have to get a paid account.
Just curious. My general feeling is to try and keep the devices out of the classroom. And so I actually really don't like things that encourage any digital.
Yeah.
Because if you walk to the back, sometimes I have my TA sit in the back and take a little survey. And if they have their devices out, they really don't pay as much attention.
I mean, they call me a Luddite even though I'm a CS professor, but that's one of the reasons I keep that. But in John's case, he really has to automate.
Yeah.
This is just a valuation in the test. And we'll see if. Anyway, a little follow-up and evaluation thing. Again, just to summarize, you can use assessment to improve learning type of thing. If there's a paper or something due, a class of 60 may be hard, but in a smaller class, you can, especially as you get in the upper level where people are going to have to write journal articles and so forth, you can have them handed in early and give them feedback at that time. I see people spend hours on the final paper writing on it. You know what the student does? Can I argue any points? No. Pop in the basket. They very seldom read through it when it's an evaluation.
And even with tests, that can sometimes happen. This is just something that we recorded a podcast a couple of days ago with an economist from Cornell. It's coming out tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, by the way. But one of the things he's starting to use is a two-stage test. In the first stage, he grades it all and gives them their feedback. But then for a subset of the questions, he lets them work on it in groups and turn in a group response, which is a portion of the grade. And it forces them to look at the results, because even with midterms and finals, students will look at it. If they did well, they're happy and they just ignore it. And if they did badly, they'll just say, well, that was horrible, and they'll toss it out. This forces them to go back and learn the things that they didn't do as well.
My friend does a two-stage test. He does it within the same course, like in the same period. So like a half an hour for your private individual test, and then they all get to take the second version of the test in small groups.
So a second version of
The exact same test,
but take it in groups. I don't understand how that's better. You take it, so you get your evaluation back.
What, you can't hear what's going on without it's on?
So you take it once by yourself. And then you take it once a week.
Outright. Think about it. Cuba owned by disorganized power over 4,000 miles
You
away.
want to stop that for a second?
Cubans were in a constant.
Oh, you did? Okay, this is the use of class time. Whose time is it?
Cubans were in constant state of revolt. In 1904, the United States decided to throw a little weight around and, who is it?
Pizza guy.
Again?
Mr. Pizza guy, sir.
Or the double cheese and sausage. Right here, dude. Here, dude. Am I hallucinating here? Just what in the hell do you think you're doing? Learning about Cuba, having some fun. Mr. Spicoli, you're on dangerous ground here. You're causing a major disturbance on my time.
You know, I've been thinking about this, Mr. Hand. If I'm here and you're here, doesn't that make it our time? Certainly there's nothing wrong with those pieces on our time.
You're absolutely right, Mr. Spicoli. It is our time. Yours, mine, and everyone else's in this room. But it is my class. Hamilton, Grant, Cornwell, up front. Mr. Spicoli has been kind enough to bring us a staff. And be my guest. Help yourselves. You're a good one.
Yeah, so this brings up a question when you're in your classroom, whose time is it? And, you know, what to. So when you're in a classroom, it's also a student's time to participate, to learn, and so forth. And if you're designing a course, and I do have another session on course design, but what are the big things you want students to get out of your course? I mean, there's a certain laundry list of things you need for the next course in the sequence sometimes, but there are certain big items that are really important in the course. When I start designing what I want to do, I'll use those big items as an anchor to design my course. So give some thought. 2 years, 1 year, 3 years, what do you want the students really get out of that course? What are the big items if you went back and asked them? So when you're designing that, that would be the main objectives in the course. And these are the items you want to spend that valuable class time, your time, my time, etc. on, so that these are the items that you want the students to walk away with real knowledge on. Again, others, my own course is a hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I decide what I can sign outside of class, what students would be able to handle outside of class. I do projects, just-in-time lectures, the whole business in class. But again, class time is valuable. I mean, I know some people say, oh, geez, I got to go teach that damn class, you know, but to the students, this is the best time you have as an instructor to do that. I have often felt we set ceilings in the course. You do this much, you get an A. The bright student probably go well beyond that. And we're saying, boom, that's enough, you get your A. I break up my assignment, say, this is what I'm asking for, this is computer science now, this is what I'm asking for a C. You go beyond that, find out something new in a language, enhance it, whatever, write down what you did, that's how you get your A. Going beyond what I'm handing out to you to give me back type of thing. So I like to take away that ceiling. I'm sometimes embarrassed because students will come back to me with things I don't know. You know, and I find the top students are sometimes more engaged in the subject matter than if you say, here's what you need for the next test type of thing. So, John, I don't know if you.
Next one.
No, that's fine. I just.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, the key is to try to find challenges that work for your top students, you know, and it's a little difficult to scale that, you know, when you have a large class. But in smaller classes, you can give, you know, the students that you know are stronger, you can encourage to do more challenging tasks, more challenging papers, more challenging projects, and so forth.
So I engage it in the evaluation system. 7 points out of 10 if you do the minimum. You can get up to 3 points, showing that you went beyond the minimum. So every student can go beyond the minimum somewhat. You know, I mean, of course, the top ones are going to go well beyond. So
But you don't want to put a cap on it. You don't want to
Yeah.
say, you know, you've learned as much as you can, you know.
It seems like you almost want to, and I don't know how this works out in the end because I haven't fully thought it through yet, but it seems like you don't want to have a value, a point of the amount of points that the assignment is worth, that you want to leave that ceiling
sure, there's a number of ways one can.
so that if a C student gets 7 points, that 2 people may have gone well beyond, but they did so in different ways, and one may have gone farther than another one.
And you don't want to discourage
They could
that.
give them-
Right,
You could give them a
exactly.
12 instead of a 10.
Sure.
But then, you know, and so that they're amassing a total of more points than the people who are getting C's. And so at the end, you're essentially evaluating by total number of points accumulated and
Right.
not necessarily
By the
by hitting
percentage
the
of it.
ceiling and then you can't go any higher. I mean, that seems
Sure.
like that would benefit students that, you know, that are on that top end of the scale. And there's,
I feel
in my
like
experience, there's not gonna be that many of them.
I think that scheme works well in the smaller classes.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I would implement it in
I don't
50 or
think it
more.
would be well taken because they want to know where the bar is. Like,
Right.
That's their.
The certainty is important.
So, right, my class is a gen ed class. It's half
Yeah.
freshmen. They want to know if they're going to pass.
Right.
That's pretty much what they.
And some of them
agree
will
with
want to
you.
know an A, but they'll want to know the least amount of work they can do to get the A.
Sure.
And
You know, and especially if it's not in their major.
in upper level courses in the major, you've got more flexibility. One time in econometrics, I had some really amazing students, and I encouraged them to do projects that were kind of the types of things grad students would do. And 3 papers ended up getting published in fairly high-rated economic journals by those students. Now, that's never happened again, but it did happen 3 or 4 years ago.
Now, levels of learning, there's, this is called Bloom's taxonomy, but it talks about levels of learning. The first level is knowledge level. In other words, many of us have exams at that level. You know, when they study, they mean memorize, etc. There's a certain level, you got to have a certain level of knowledge to start with about general things, but sometimes I've seen whole courses, even in upper level, just at the knowledge level. You know, here's my lecture, regurgitate back to me, etc., and so on. So again, studying means memorize. The next level up is a comprehension or understanding level, the aha moment. Ah, I know what you're talking about. You know, and when you're moving on from that, application level, be able to apply it, and especially in your field, to apply it in the field or whatever, you know, can you apply what you're learning type of thing. If you're going to test at a different level than knowledge level, now with the cards you can do that because you're not just testing it, but if you're going to test at a different level, you have to tell the students and make sure they're aware of how you're going to approach your exams, because they have been tested at the knowledge level for 12 years. If you're going to test at a higher level, you can't just spring it on them. They'll say, well, you didn't tell me that. It's like having a rectangle with a rectangle with a triangle on top and ask for the area, but you didn't show them the area of that. You just show them the area of a square and a triangle. And then you test them putting together, and this, you didn't teach me how to do that. So you know, you can't spring it on, you got to tell them what you're trying to do, but this allows your testing and so forth to be at a much higher level than just regurgitation, and the cards allow that. Again, there's certain facts and stuff you know, getting to a simple level, you know your times tables and stuff in mathematics, you can't. But I mean, beyond that,
Oh, it's interesting. So I hadn't gone through this Bloom's before, but essentially my tests are application level tests.
excellent.
But the way that the grades tend to fall out is that if they're at level 1, they generally get a C. If they're at level 2, they get a B, and if they're at level
I agree.
3, they get an A.
Right.
And so I do warn them that I ask application type questions
Sure.
that, and also conceptual drawings and things like that. So they understand and early on that I don't want them to memorize. They still don't understand what that means until they take their first test. And then, but you know, right now they say my tests are very hard to take, and they tend to not do as well on them as they thought they should because they're at that level 1, and I'm forcing them to go
A little bit
try to
higher,
go to
yeah.
level
Sure,
3.
and they've been at level 1 almost all their
Yeah.
educational
Yeah.
career.
I get the same, I have the exact same response in my vertical class too.
Yeah.
Right? The first exam, they do terribly. And then the second exam, they generally do a lot better because they have that learning curve.
Right.
And then,
Closing the library, not too long from now.
in 15
They're
minutes,
closing the library. Oh, 15 minutes, okay,
yeah, or 15.
okay.
And so the one thing that they actually never commented on in the reviews, but I think helps a lot is I make the first exam count way less than the others, like 10%. So
That's
it's
good.
pretty harmless.
It's a good idea.
You know, it's relatively harmless for them to have that learning moment.
Well, again, when you're doing this and especially getting freshmen or sophomores, you do want to get a buy-in right at the beginning. You know, like you mentioned, there's going to be application questions. You know,
Yeah.
if you're doing that, otherwise, that's going to negatively affect your evaluations. We got one more video, John.
Okay. Is that right now?
Yeah, the answer one there. Yeah. Now this one is saying, who cares?
What, you can't hear what's going on in the auditorium?
Oh, yeah, I hear it.
This is the guy in the beginning, Mr. Holland. This is the end of his program. Have you improved class? Okay. We go to the very last slide there. This is the one my class likes the best. I thank you guys for putting up through our technical difficulties. Anybody want the handout?
Oh, I would actually. Thanks.
Sure, I think.
Kate, do you have any comments or questions?